Okay, and we're live. We've got episode 7 of the Coffee Expeditions podcast, and really excited today. I've got someone and his team that have helped me and my family out immensely in the last year. His name is Joe Hippensteel. He's the owner of Ultimate Human Performance. He's done some incredible things with incredible people, athletes, regular people like myself, and it's going to be really exciting to chat about all the great things he does. Joe, do you mind just introducing yourself to the viewers and listeners?
Sure. First, thank you, Reed, for having me. My name is Joe Hippensteel. My company is Ultimate Human Performance, and we focus on human performance. We want to take it to the highest level. So thanks for having me, Reed.
Yeah, I know it's great. And just before I forget, I don't want to forget, you have a website, ultimatehumanperformance.com, and your Instagram is Ultimate Human Performance by Joe. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's it.
Yeah, and of course you have your book, The Joe Hippensteel Method, as well, which is awesome. There you go. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So how I came to learn about you was a couple ways. So first of all, everyone talks about, you've worked with the Navy SEALs, but everybody talks about the fact that you worked with David Goggins, and he mentioned you in his book. And it's interesting because I listened to that book, but I kind of glossed over that part of it. But I'd heard about David doing these huge stretching routines, and I just chalked it up at the time as David being extreme, just David doing his extreme thing and not really understanding what he was doing. And then, about a year later, I was injured pretty good in jiu-jitsu. My whole right side, lower back, glute was just locked right up, and I was in pain 24/7. I had a big trip planned down to Austin that we did go on, and I wanted to train with the famous instructor, John Danaher at Renzo Gracie. I had like 4 or 5 sessions planned, and I only ended up doing one because I was just in agony. And I got lucky because I listened to Eddie Bravo, the famous jiu-jitsu black belt from 10th Planet. He was on Joe Rogan. And I got lucky because I listened to the very end of that podcast, and he mentioned briefly, because he's had some serious back issues over the years. He mentioned briefly how he was introduced to you by your employee Day, who's a student of his, and how much it's been beneficial to him. So I took a chance, and I bought your videos, went on your website, and I started studying. And it wasn't soon thereafter that things really started to click for me in terms of what you were saying. I started implementing the techniques, and it wasn't like a couple of weeks before I was starting to feel a lot of pain relief, and it also really opened my eyes to where I was at. But maybe just to start off with, before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of like what you teach, is like maybe just talk about the journey of how you got to where you're at and your athletic background, if that's okay, because I know you have a strong athletic background, and that lended heavily to how you've created these methods.
Yeah. I'm glad I got the opportunity to work with you, since you're a black belt, since you're a fireman, first responder. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I guess when I was pretty young and always enjoyed athletics, was always in 3 sports at least: football, basketball, and track. And I did all 3 sports through high school. Always wanted to work out, always wanted to train, lifting weights and running and everything else. And so that led me to, when I first went to college, I went to a small school in Pennsylvania. And I was a biology major thinking about med school because I wanted to keep learning more about the human body and performance and all that. And it didn't really give me what I wanted to learn. And the sports there, because it was a Division III school, wasn't the big emphasis that I wanted, and seriousness of the right coaching staff, et cetera. So I just ventured out and I transferred to California. I said, that's it. I'm going to train for the Olympics. I'm going to focus on track and field. I was too small to play the other sports. And when I started focusing on track and field, I wanted to do the all-around sport, which is the decathlon, 10 events in track and field, all events, discus, javelin, shot put, high jump, long jump, pole vault, hurdles, running events. So because I wasn't good enough in any one event. So I figured, well, maybe if I did the overall, I could shine in some of the events and catch up in some others, and work on my weaknesses. So So I focused on the decathlon, and because I'm small, I had to train harder and longer to compete against all the other guys who are over 6 foot. I'm 5'8". So to high jump against them, throw the shot put against them, match their strides when they're bigger and stronger, just wasn't in the cards. So I just kept training and training and training. And after I graduated, did well there, became All-American, top 8 Americans, and got a Scholar Athlete Award. I was tops in my class. So everything was pointing towards keep going, try and be successful, try and take this as far as you can. So I went into training, and I trained for many, many years. And that's what started developing my training system, which I was able to have tremendous improvements and overcome literally over 100 injuries over a 20-year period. I was training 8 to 10 hours a day, most days, and trying to work on the side. Lived in my car for a while so that I could train more and work less.
Yeah.
So um, it's really just perseverance, and that's what created my system. That's where I
Yeah.
learned what I learned.
It's impressive because you talked about, you know, your size compared to the other athletes, and you were able to take your body to incredible heights in terms of being at that upper echelon of decathlon, which is incredible. And you also, like you said, you touched on, you had like 100 injuries, but my understanding is that's what kind of led you to figuring out how to loosen your body off and hopefully avoid surgery. Um, that was a lot of trial and error, wasn't it? And along the route of the journey.
Yeah, yeah. You know, when you're training 8 hours a day, you're creating a lot of demand for your body. The intensity is um, pretty demanding on the joints and the muscles, and you reach fatigue levels, and you keep going. Eventually, things break down.
Yeah.
And when I go to the physical therapist, I go to the acupuncturist, I go to the athletic trainer, and they have all these gadgets and all these machines and things and stuff that they hook to you, and you're supposed to sit there and electric stim on the muscle, and
Yeah.
um, I just didn't find the results that I wanted. So I just kept thought, okay, maybe if I get stronger, I'm not going to have these things. And then you get more fatigued, and work on my technique so it's most efficient. And then the flexibility part. And it just seemed like when I put all those together, emphasizing more so the flexibility, I discovered some magic secrets. And
Yeah.
literally, what I found was when they told me my first big aha moment was um, when I pulled a hamstring in my sprinting in. I was in Arizona at the time with a world class sprint coach, and my hamstring seemed to grab and seemed to what everyone told me was a torn hamstring. And I was at the peak of my game. It was 6 weeks before the Olympic trials, and I'm like, I can do this. And then my hamstring goes, and without the hamstring, you can't sprint, you can't jump. So with everyone confirming that, yep, it's torn, nothing I can do, I thought, well, I'm just going to make it stronger. I'm going to go to the weight room. I'm going to do more hamstring curls, try and make it stronger and stronger. And that made it worse. And
Right.
it hurt so bad that at night I couldn't sleep. So I massaged it, and I massaged it deeper. And I felt like the more I massaged deeply, the more I could stretch it. And so I kept massaging very deeply to the point of doing what they call trigger point, where you're pressing on a spot. And it seemed to melt down. That allowed me more flexibility. And then I reached a certain level of flexibility where I could actually put my nose on my knee with my leg straight, and it was gone. And it was like,
That's
well, my muscle's torn. How can that
yeah.
be possible? So I
Yeah.
logically I deduced that there was a kink in the muscle. I got it out.
Yeah.
I did the same thing then. I had that same discovery with my shoulder, same discovery with back spasms. If you reach certain levels of flexibility, all these labels that the doctors put on you, they go away. I don't care if it's migraine headache or tennis elbow or plantar fasciitis, restless leg syndrome, back spasms, you name it. And all those things are just tension. And when
Yeah.
I learned certain ranges of motion, eliminate these things, all those labels go away. There's no more syndromes. There's no more of those conditions. And so what I discovered was 24 ranges of motion. And by following those 24 ranges of motion, almost anything that hurts in your musculoskeletal system goes away. I don't care what they put on it as a label for their medical lingo and for their insurance purposes and whatever, we can make it go away. And so I started working with friends on the track to help them because I was keeping myself going, help my friends. And then I started to say, I got to turn this into a business. And so we've grown now to the point where we have 10,000 clients in 57 countries. We have actually 58. We have a new country. And we have over 100 instructors trained in I think 12 or 13 different countries now. So we're proving success. We're working with pro athletes, working with the Navy SEALs. The biggest thing, we've spent 14 years with the Navy SEALs, and they are a very, very tough population to work with. And we are just making their injuries go away. And it almost causes antagonism with the physical therapists and the athletic trainers there because our stuff works. And they go to them and they hook them up to a machine, electric stim or acupuncture or whatever they do. And it's just not doing what we can do. So we're finding miraculous results.
It's been amazing for me. First of all, I didn't understand what my range of motions, like how bad they were, and I definitely didn't understand how to loosen my body off. I had researched stretching, trying to figure it out for my whole life, pretty much. Had limited results. I enjoy yoga, but it didn't really work for me. And then when I started doing your 24 ranges of motion and learning about your system, it just made a huge difference. I was able to, it took time. It took a lot of work and effort, but my ranges are pretty much like probably 85% or more fully open now, I'd say. And I've just got a couple more that I've got to kind of keep working at. And that's been like 8 months of work. So yeah, it's been pretty incredible. Now for you, you started working with the Navy SEALs, but you were working with professional athletes before that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was able to start with a few golfers and baseball pitchers, and like right now, there's a epidemic in elbow injuries and shoulder injuries with pitchers. And bottom line is, none of them have the ranges of motion that they should. Interestingly, some of the ones from Japan who do a lot of flexibility work, they have less injuries. And so,
Interesting.
yeah, so with the pro athletes that I worked with and the Navy SEALs that I worked with, we just kept accumulating more and more data, more and more success, and we got to hundreds of high level athletes like that, and then it became thousands. So the results are the same. We just keep hammering away and teaching flexibility. And like you said, you're in jujitsu, so I know you have decent flexibility, but there's a lot of contractions when you're doing jujitsu over and over and over, hundreds and hundreds. So you're using your whole body, like wrestling, jujitsu, etc. And so there's got to be a standard. And what makes us different is we have a standard. We have an exact protocol. It's not just stretching. Stretching is kind of a overall term that's overused and not really understood. And we've taken it to the umpteenth level, where if you reach an exact level, your pain's gone. And we have what's called the building phase and the maintenance phase. You've got to go through the building phase, holding a stretch for 2 minutes. Who holds a stretch for 2 minutes?
Right.
They do have some holds in yoga, but there's no consistency. There's no repetition of the same range of motion over and over and over. 2 minutes on, 1 minute rest. 2 minutes on, 1 minute rest. They go right to another pose and another pose, and another pose. Ours is exact. You have to build what we call the basic building blocks first, then you expand on that until your whole body is reworked.
That's what, like, for me, what really hit home is, number one, you had a standard. So for people that don't maybe understand that, it means when you're doing these stretches, it's sort of a target that you're looking to try to get your body to. And then secondly, the big thing for me that was crucial was you had progression. So it was like, okay, we're not maybe going to do all 24 stretches initially because you're too tight to do all of those. So we'll start off with 5 or 6 and we'll build those up. And once you start hitting those standards, we'll start adding more on. And that was huge because the first part of it is I could measure, I had a measurable, okay, this is, where I'm at. I'm like so far off of your standard. And the second part of it is it gave me a clear path. Like I wasn't kind of randomly trying to stretch something. And then the other thing is you define, like, there's rules to what you do. So when people look at this program, they might come in and go, oh, it's just 24 ranges of motion. Well, no, there's complexity here. There's, you have to understand what you're doing. It's not that you can't do it. It's not so complex that you can't do it. You can definitely easily learn it, but there's complexity. Like, I've been doing it for 8 months and I'm still learning the little nuances to what's going on here. I went back and preparing for this podcast, and I was like, oh, I listened to a few of the things you were saying on a couple of your interviews and I'm like, oh, now that makes sense. Like, what you said made sense. It's like, I studied John Danaher a lot for jiu-jitsu, and he's a legend in that world. And a lot of people can't listen to him because he talks very slowly and methodically. But I think it's not so much that, it's that he's giving so many nuggets of information along the way. Sometimes you're not ready to absorb that. And so what I found is, at first, yeah, like, things were clicking. I'm learning what you're saying, but now, like, 8 months later, it's starting to click even more. And so having that progression, those standards, those goals really, really helped me, progress. And my daughter and my wife, they've immensely, it's helped them immensely. It's phenomenal overall.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. There's definitely specifics. There's definitely goals with exact standards. But what we do is we break it down into what we call the basic building blocks first. There's 4 lower body and 2 upper body stretches that, once you conquer those, you can add the rest. And you may
Yeah,
never need all 24, but you may need 15 of them. If you're a runner, you need all the lower body ones. But as an example, most people can't sit with their legs crossed, leaning forward to touch their head to the ground.
right.
And that doesn't, people kind of laugh at that, saying, oh, well, I'm just tight. Well, it's not a genetic joke.
Yeah, yeah,
It's something that you've created in your lifestyle through your training or through your lifestyle or the way you sit over and over at a computer 8 hours a day, whatever it is that created it, you have to undo it. You can't
yeah,
just accept it. And then by the time you're 40 years old, everything hurts. And the doctors say, oh, you're just aging. You have arthritis and bursitis and tendinitis and all these things. I'm like, no, do the maintenance. Make, if you want to make your car last 250,000 miles, you got to change the oil. You got
yeah,
to change the fluids. You got to keep it maintained. You've got to maintain the human body, and people aren't doing that. They just work out, work out, work out until they can't do it anymore. Then the doctor tells them, "Oh, you need knee surgery." Okay, fine. And it's the wrong way to go. You can do it naturally. You can do it consistently and stay young. I tell
yeah.
people you're going to be 17 years old forever when you reach these ranges, and they think I'm kidding. And I get emails or texts a month or two later, and they say, "You weren't kidding."
No,
They feel great.
yeah. It's amazing. I feel a million times better than I did a year ago. And now, like, this is one thing I was thinking about too, is, first of all, I didn't know where my ranges should be. Now my ranges are, they're getting there. They're not 100% there, but they're almost there. But I call it now. So what happens is, so say I go for a big mountain bike ride, and then I don't stretch that day, and I sleep overnight, and then I stretch the next day. My ranges they've reduced. And so what I almost think of it now as, I'm resetting my ranges of motion to where they should be. And I Madison, my daughter, and I were talking about this yesterday. I don't understand how people do it when they don't have this knowledge. And I think I told you that years ago. I was like, I don't understand how everybody doesn't understand or know this stuff, because it's, especially as you get older. I mean, it's definitely important for young athletes, but as you get older, it's so important. And it's really a game changer. It's been a game changer for my life, for sure. It's huge.
Yeah, there's no
Absolutely huge.
question about it. It's a it's a life altering concept, and once you know it, you can't unknow it. And once you start doing this and you feel the results, you actually
Yeah.
feel them every day. When you skip a day, it's like, no, I want to go back and do it because it feels good to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spending the time, getting the body back to the maintenance level, and from there, in the athletic world right now, they say don't do static stretching before you work out because you'll inactivate the muscles. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. They do dynamic warm up. Everybody's doing dynamic warm up. You
Right.
got to do some static stretching to get to your range. Then you do dynamic to warm up for the activity that you're doing. But
Yeah.
you've got to do if you don't do the static stretching to our level and maintain that every day that you train or every day that you sit at your desk or whatever your lifestyle is, you get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. The muscles get shorter and shorter, and then things start to hurt. Then they give you a label. You have tennis elbow, you have plantar
Yeah.
fasciitis, you have a bulging disc, and all it is tension. It's
Yeah.
just tension. If we can just get the word out for that, for people to understand, why do you have migraine headaches? There's tension in two little muscles in the back of your neck, choking nerves. Why do you have tennis elbow? Because you've overused these on your backhand in tennis to the point where now instead of being 8 inches long, they're 6 inches long. So now we got to go in and we got to stretch them. We got to open them up. We got to get those ranges of motion back
Yeah.
to the level that all kids can do, no adults can do. All kids can do our ranges, every
Yeah.
one of them.
It's
And
incredible.
once you can get back to that, literally you're 17 years old forever. It's an amazing miracle.
What you just said there is like, it's something that is so important for people to try to understand that. And I think the more that you're in tune with your body, the more you're going to kind of get that combined with the stretching principles. I had no idea any of that. And now I very much understand it. And I'm still learning, of course, but the idea that repetitive firing of your muscle will tighten your muscles up and reduce your ranges of motion. And so like I still use other things, right? Like this is my number one. Like the stretching is my number one. It took over everything else, and it's still my number one, and it always will be. I use things like ice bath and sauna, and I go to massage a little bit. But things like those things, like a lacrosse ball on the wall, that's not going to increase your ranges of motion.
Right?
This will increase your range of motion. Those things are great supplemental things to this, in my opinion. But if you don't have your ranges of motion open, and yeah, you're just going to teeter on injury eventually, and cause problems. Is that kind of a fair assessment on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. A lot of people will go to a massage therapist and they have them do trigger point work. So if they have a kink
Yep.
in their back or whatever, and they press on it and it kind of melts down the tension, but it doesn't lengthen the muscle. If you have a 7 inch muscle in an 8 inch slot, you can press on it all you want and try and melt down some of the tension. But if
Yep.
it's not 8 inches long, you're still going to have that tension there once you get up from the table. So all those other things are just superfluous to the base. Has to be flexibility to a standard, and that's what we're
Yeah.
teaching. And I know you
100%.
get it as a jujitsu guy and as a middle aged person. You jumped on this and you did phenomenally well right from the beginning because you took it seriously. And as you felt the improvements, it's like, okay, I want to keep going.
Yep.
So I'm really proud of you, Reed, for
Yeah.
your accomplishments with this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and and thank you to you and your team. Like the thing that I did that helped me, like for anyone that might be starting this, is I right away took pictures of where I was at. So I learned your standards. You explained where they should be at, and like if you look at someone like Mimi, she can drop into all these in like 10 minutes, and it's incredible to see. Now, for me, I was doing an hour and a half, which to people they'll be like, "Oh my god, an hour and a half!" But when you understand why you're doing it for an hour and a half, and that's not always going to be the case, it makes a lot of sense. And when I would take those pictures and I would look at where I was like, holy mackerel, I'm so far off of what the targets I should be aiming for. And then after 2 weeks, a month, I would take more pictures. I took probably 6 or 7. I haven't done it in a little while, like progression pictures, and you can see the improvements. And I think like for people, if you can kind of understand that it's going to take some time, depending, not everybody's a little bit different, of course, but as someone like myself that was so tight at 53 years old, I'm undoing essentially like 50 years of like playing
Right.
hard. So it's going to take time to get there. But when you see that happening, oh man, it's so rewarding. And then you just feel better. And then you start to realize, no, this is effective. It actually works.
Yeah, and you're right. You have to undo decades worth of tightening. And um, the way you described it is you have to go through this building phase. That's why people are at the beginning doing an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Some of
Yep.
our Navy SEALs are stretching 3 hours a day to start the process and then repeat the process and then repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it to undo years of hard training.
Yep.
But you get to the point where here's the goal. You reach our standards, 20 minutes a day, and nothing hurts. So you have to work your way from that hour and a half, work your way down to 20 minutes a day. But it does take time. And in our program, we use 18 different criteria, not just, well, how long should you stretch? I've read articles for all these PhDs and doctorates in physical therapy, and they're talking about, oh, you should stretch for 30 seconds. Well, they don't even know which stretches to do, how long to do them, whether you're
Yeah.
in the building phase or the maintenance phase. What's the progression? What's the the basic building blocks leading into the more complex stretches? So it's just kind of a random opinion. We
Yeah.
don't have opinion. We have science, and we
Yeah.
finally developed it. We perfected it, and we're having tremendous results. We have people that fly in to us from Europe or from Australia just to get their back out of spasm that they've had for 10 years. And they've spent tens of thousands of dollars with chiropractors and acupuncturists and e-stim and physical therapy. And it just doesn't work. For
Yeah.
most people, you got to get your body back to what you can do. Kids don't have back spasms. Kids don't have tennis elbow.
Right.
And,
Right.
because they're just naturally loose until they screw it up after decades worth of
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they're from playing hard, getting into sports, and maybe working construction, whatever it might be. Like you're swinging a hammer all day long. The one of the things that, like, I was thinking about this quite a bit over the last like 8 months is I wanted to bounce it off you, is it seems like the human muscle, it's kind of, and the human body, like the human, first of all, the human body doesn't seem to give good indicators sometimes of where you're at. So I always use the example of thirst. Like if you feel thirsty in a marathon or say like an ultra endurance event, it's probably way late. Like you're probably almost like, maybe a day behind even, or maybe like half a day behind in your what you should be. So the signals it seems to give you are not the greatest. And would you say that like muscles are similar in that regard, where they're not telling you that they're getting tighter and you're able to operate for a long time until they finally either pop a ligament or tendon or the muscle like just spasms? Is that a fair assessment, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And we, when a muscle goes beyond tight, it'll lock. There's 12 reasons why a muscle will lock. For example, impact injury. If you have whiplash, a car hits you and your head goes like this, the muscles in the neck are literally going to lock to prevent the vertebra and the ligaments from tearing. And if they wouldn't lock, your head would you'd crack the spine. You would herniate a disc. You tear
Right.
the ligaments. And so once those muscles lock, they do not unlock unless you do what we teach. You can go get trigger point. You can go do e-stim. You can do the dry needling and all the gadgets and stuff they do. But bottom line is, if you don't lengthen that muscle to the length it's supposed to be, it's going to be a problem. And
Right.
so you've got to be able to persevere with a specific goal in mind. If it takes a month or 6 months or whatever it takes, you have a choice. People say, well, I don't have time to stretch for an hour and a half a day. Okay. Do you have time to hurt for the rest of your life? Do you have time to
Right.
get those surgeries and then recover from the surgeries for 6 months where you can't do anything anyway?
Yeah.
So why don't you put the time in now, and stay ahead of it rather than continue to get behind it?
Yeah.
When
That
when
that
when we worked with the Navy SEALs, Dave Goggins, who with his book "Can't Hurt Me," 5 million people have read the book, and he says I saved his life there. Bottom line is, he had trained and trained and trained and trained ultra marathons and ultra everything. Everything he does was extreme to the point where he couldn't move anymore. He
right.
was like, it's like standing in the North Pole with no clothes on, and you're just frozen. Doctors are trying to pump drugs into him. He was on 17 different meds when he finally called me up and says, Joe, you saved my life. I started stretching. I thought stretching was bullshit. I thought it was just a waste of time. He said,
Yeah.
now I do it every day.
Yeah, he's religious with it now, isn't he? He's for a long time he's been, and this is the thing is that, so he's extreme. He's an extreme athlete, extreme endurance athlete, and amazing performer. And now I'm very recreational, but I still was able to lock my muscles up severely to the point where I was in pain 24/7, couldn't sleep at all. One of the things that I wanted to touch on is it seems like, and I know you've got some pretty interesting cases where the muscle locks so tight, like you just said, where it might take a long time for this muscle to release. And I think people don't understand that. Like I definitely did not understand that. I would have just thought, well, the muscle, you just stretch it out a bit and it'll be good again. But when it's locked, it's like it has a mind of its own almost. Is that a fair kind of assessment?
Yeah, we call it muscle lock. It's a new term we're introducing to the world that really describes what the problem is. If you have a migraine headache, you have muscle lock in two little muscles behind your neck. If you have tennis elbow, you have muscle lock in your forearm. Plantar fasciitis has nothing to do with the fascia. It's the arch muscles that control the toes that are too tight. They're locked. Muscle lock. Restless leg syndrome, where people have to constantly move to get blood flow. It's because their muscles are locked. It chokes nerves and it chokes off blood vessels. So you've got to keep moving. So all these things again are what we call muscle lock. The way out is a lot of stretching, very specifically the way we do it: 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, 2 minutes on, 1 minute off. We may do 4 or 5 reps of one position, then move on to the more advanced position, then the next position. And in addition to the stretching, then we do a little bit of trigger point work or a little bit of deep tissue massage work in order to kind of melt down some of the tension. Then we go right back to stretching. An important point: trigger point is not a therapy. If you go to any physical therapist or massage therapist, of course it's a therapy. No. What it really is, it's an aid to the stretching. Stretching is the key. Trigger point helps the stretching. But if you go there to a massage and they work on your trigger points in your back, oh, that feels great. 15 minutes later, they're back again because you haven't lengthened the muscle. So you haven't changed anything. All you've done is calm them down a little bit for a few minutes. So, that's what we're trying to teach is, bottom line is it takes work. You got to undo, like you said, decades sometimes worth of accumulative tension that you've created with your lifestyle or with your training or whatever you do. Even when I see kids these days, if they're reading, they're playing with their video, and they're leaning, let's say, on their elbow on this side, and they're using the left hand to do all the work. They're taking their neck and they're doing this for an hour on their neck, and you're creating a problem. So you got to be conscious of what you're doing. You have to know how to undo what you're doing. That's what we have 24 ranges to do that.
And or like looking at their cell phone with their head leaned way forward.
Yeah.
All that. The one thing that like what I found is like with the muscles being so tight and it's interesting because I was lucky to come down with my daughter and we spent a week with you and learned the stretching seminar, learned the techniques of the trigger. And you said all the way through is like trigger is like maybe 10 or 20% of it. It's the bulk of this is stretching. And it's absolutely been true. Like I've done some trigger for my daughter because she does endurance sports and it has helped her. But we very, very little, like barely ever need that because we are stretching so well. And so it's only occasionally that she might have a real tight cramp or something from just training hard that we'll utilize that. But it goes back to, I think your point there is understanding what you're doing with the muscle is going to be a big aid to getting it back to where it should be. And so like understanding what is the pressure of the trigger point doing versus the actual stretching or to get that range of motion back. And that's something I didn't understand at all.
Yeah. Because without trying to, we are training the muscle to be tight with our lifestyle. We're training. We're training it. Let's say you're a marathon runner and your ranges of motion are like this instead of sprinting like this. So, if you go out and run 10 miles a day or whatever your goals are, whatever your plan is for your training, you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over, and you're training your muscles to be tight. We have to train them to open back up. It's not a matter of just, okay, you're going to press on it with your thumb or do dry needling or electric stim where it gives you pulses or whatever. You got to train it to open back up. How do you do that? You try and hold it open for 2 minutes and then you rest. And then when you're resting after 2 minutes, a little bit of blood is going to seep into those little gaps that you've opened and it drops off the calcium and magnesium. It's like putting oil in the Tin Man on Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And you start for another 2 minutes. Then you rest. And you absorb some more blood. And another 2 minutes, over and over and over. It may take days, it may take weeks, it may take months. Yep. But you're training it to open back up again. But when I've sometimes people call me and they say, well, I've been stretching, going your basic building blocks for 3 months and my back's still tight. And I say, okay, so what else are you doing? Tell me about your workouts. Oh, well, I lift weights 4 days a week. I run 5 days a week. I'm doing bike 3 days a week. I said, how much are you stretching? Well, I stretch for 30 minutes 3 times a week. Okay, do you see the difference?
Yeah.
Hour and a half of
Yeah.
stretching, 20 hours of training. So if you want to cancel it and you want to reverse that process, you got to commit to it. And
Yeah.
it's hard work. I'm not saying you just stretch a little bit and it's fine. It's hard work, but it is the answer.
Yeah. And this is the thing, like for people listening or, watching the video is when Joe says it's hard work, he means it. Like the things he's saying, these are all important things to understand. Now it's doable. It's like, when I took the challenge of opening up my ranges of motion, it was hard. Like it's as hard as any athletic endeavor I've done. Not like painful hard, not like, mentally. I think it's mentally, you just got to get into a routine, be consistent. And now, like I said, if I go for, like, say, a hard mountain bike ride, 2-3 hours, and I come back in and I sleep overnight, I haven't stretched, immediately everything's tightened up, like I said earlier. And I know that. And so now I just reset it back to where it was. I'm able to reset it to where it should be,
Yeah.
versus what I would have done before is not stretched. So now it's tight. And then I go out and I ride again, and I'm able to get through the ride, and I'm tighter and I'm tighter. But you don't realize this. And I kind of equate it to, like, sometimes people will be like, oh, I don't have time, an hour and a half or whatever. It's like, if you look at it, like, sometimes you'll see somebody who wants to go into the gym and they're like, I want to put 20 pounds of size on. Well, that's going to take some time to change your body and put that size on. It's going to take 6 months, a year, whatever. Well, it's kind of the same in my mind in this. You're kind of making microscopic changes back to where you should have been. Is that a fair assessment or comparison?
Yeah, for sure. It's perseverance. If you want to change your physiology, you have to persevere.
Yeah.
And there's no shortcuts. Now, that being said, 20% of the population has natural flexibility. The other 80% doesn't. The 20% can go to a yoga class, they can do whatever they want to do and do it all wrong, and the body's still open. The other 80%, not going to happen. The people that enjoy yoga are the ones who have natural flexibility. The rest of them, they can't enjoy it because there's so many people that get injured in yoga trying to keep up with the skinny little yoga instructor up front because they make it look so easy. And you got to be really careful. You got to have a protocol. This is a medical, scientific protocol that we've developed, and it's the cure. It really is. It's the answer. But it takes perseverance. It takes hard work, for sure.
It's hard work. And the other thing too, like, what I was thinking about with athletes, and I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but so if I looked at my two daughters, my older daughter going through soccer, I think she got really tight really young, like 13, 14 years old. You'd watch her running, and often, honestly, like, she was one of the most technical players at the time in our kind of local soccer scene. She was very, like, for this area, they both were very, very good for this local little area. But it was almost like watching her running in sand. Sometimes it looked like she was so tight, versus my other daughter, effortless running, effortless movement. And I wonder sometimes with athletes, some athletes have, like you said, that extra ability or the extra flexibility, and range of motions longer, almost like they can, they've got the natural flexibility, but they're able to sustain it longer. So I think, though, eventually you will tighten up, even with if you're doing your sport long enough, hard enough, you will tighten up. It might not be at 14 years old, it might be 26 years old. Is that kind of a fair statement? Or
Yeah, the 20% of the population that has natural flexibility, yes, eventually they'll tighten up, but it takes them a week,
to
two
get it
weeks,
back?
and
Yeah.
all the ranges are back. Whereas
Right.
the rest of us, you get into your 40s and 50s, it may take you months. It may
Yeah.
take you a year to get your ranges of motion back. I'm constantly working on my body because I've worked so many hours on my clients and Navy SEALs, and it's very demanding. I've gotten to the point where I had to back off in the last month or two and spend more time with me. I'm spending 3 hours a day stretching right now. I still have some kinks I'm working on, so it's
Yeah.
always a
Yeah.
challenge, but it's something I have to do to get back to my maintenance level, and it's work. Now, the one thing that we're talking about where so many people are going to say, well, I don't have an hour and a half. Okay. But you're going to hurt. You're going to continue to hurt. Yeah, but I still don't have an hour and a half. Okay. Do you watch television?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we prescribe, okay, you have to watch 5 2-hour movies this week. Okay, I can do that. Stretch while you're doing it. That's why they have the pause button. You
Yeah.
lean forward to put your head towards the ground. You press the pause button.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're watching the whole movie and you're stretching the whole time, and your body turns out better because of it. So
100%.
you
Yep.
can make the time.
Yeah, I often will. I've got my routine down. I'll have either an Audible book going, or music, or a podcast, right? And I just throw that on in the background, and or sometimes we do it as a family too. So I'm very lucky that way. My girls, they want to do it with me, so we'll just chit chat about everybody's day.
Great.
But we make the time. We definitely try to we make the time, and we're very religious about it. It's pretty much almost every day. I'd say 5 days out of 7 in a week, kind of thing, something to that effect. And it's been excellent. I was going to ask you a little bit about, how did you get involved with the Navy SEALs, and how did that all come about? Because you've worked with them for 14 years, and obviously those guys are incredibly tight, I would imagine, and like they're elite athletes. They're working really, really hard. And I just, how did that all come about?
Yeah. You know, I just kept teaching what I do, and uh, when we were out on the track one day doing a hard track workout, and one of the guys was there, a stranger that we had met before he was doing sprints, and we started talking, and he said he had a knee issue. So I said, well, I can help you with the knee. Oh, no, I have to get knee surgery. I played NFL football for in America, and I said, well, tell me what's wrong with your knee. He goes, well, I got damage in the joint, and arthritis, and I said, well, come see me. I said, let's spend a session. And it took, I think, 3 or 4 sessions. His knee was completely better. He's doing squats. He's like, well, he went to the Naval Academy and was in the Navy for a few years. And so he knew some of the Navy SEAL captains and one admiral. And so he said, I want to introduce you to these guys. So we went in. The first day that we introduced what we do to them, they jumped on it. And they said, okay, let's do a seminar. They said, how many guys do you need? How many hours? And we said, well, we agreed on 25 guys, 3 days, 3 hours each. And we had 3 of us instructors. And we had 22 out of 25 guys say, oh my God, this is life changing. We got to have this. We got to add this to our training. The 3 guys in the back of the room that didn't like it, Dave Goggins, and 2 doctors, they just thought it was bullshit. It's just
Yeah.
stretching. And the other 22 were like, no, we got to do this. So Navy SEAL Foundation jumped in, started funding our program, and they just give us free reins to work on the guys. So
Yeah.
it's been a great run.
That's amazing. I mean, and I'm sure there's nobody that would need it more as those guys. The amount that they punish their bodies, and how tight they get, and they're trying to operate at elite levels for years and years. So the
Yes.
more that they can back their bodies off and loosen them off, hopefully, the better they can operate and do their jobs, right?
Yeah, we've saved over at least 400 guys from surgery.
Man.
Schedule for surgery, or knowing that's the only alternative, and we get them to stretch out the tension, and the joints don't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the physical therapist will say, well, you still have pathology in the joint. You need surgery. And like, if I have full range of motion, if I have full strength, and it doesn't hurt, why would I get surgery? Just
Right.
because
Yeah.
you want me to? That's not the right reason.
Yeah, that's
So,
like what I sort of thought too is, I mean, I was in so much pain, and I sympathize for people that are in pain like 24/7, because I was in so much pain that I was willing to do just about anything to get out of it. And when I started studying your program and learning about it, and kind of it was working, I was thinking, why wouldn't people at least try this? Like, try it and just see. But you do have to commit. It is hard work. You've got to kind of really get in tune with your body, and put the time commitment in. But clearly it's worked for the Navy SEALs. I was lucky when I came down. You had one of the Navy SEALs came in. We were able to work on him a little bit, which was a real honor and privilege. You've also had some other notable people that you worked with, like Eddie Bravo, who had he's had severe back injury. Like, I know Joe Rogan and him have talked about it quite a bit, and I think he had surgery, and he's had quite a bit of success, I think, through your program as well. Is that fairly correct? Or
yeah, we've had the privilege of working with a lot of professional athletes, and Eddie Bravo, who has been a world champion, has had problems with his back for 6 years, had one back surgery. They told him he's going to have to come back and get another back surgery. He had not done jiu-jitsu for 6 years. And one of my employees kept talking to him about, she was also a student of his, and she says, no, we can help you. And he says, I've had so many people tell me they have the right guy to help me and all this. And So he finally came down and tried it, and in one day he's 50% better. Never had the second back surgery. Stretches almost every day. He says some days he feels so good he forgets to stretch.
That's awesome.
I
Oh,
mean,
that's good. That's good to
yeah,
hear. Yeah,
and
because
with like
it's
great clients like that have really jumped on it and
yeah,
loved it.
and open minded enough to give it a try. That's a big part of it too. Because a lot of times I think in society,
Right.
for whatever reason, we get our biases, or we get our, people, maybe say, oh, that's not going to work or whatever. What are some of the biggest challenges that you found with people in terms of like buying in? Is it like they'll like the time commitment thing, or is there other things that kind of come up that people kind of like resist the idea of trying it? Or
Um, Time commitment is a big thing. But when we take them through the first session, we usually spend an hour and a half with them. And I do that in order to make them feel better.
yeah,
In other words, I do it until they feel better. When they feel it, then they have a choice. They want to keep feeling better and keep doing it, but they can back off and whine and complain for the rest of their life and not get
right,
it done.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that they, yeah, yeah,
that's probably the biggest challenge is the time commitment. Um, Believing that they can get rid of like bulging discs or anything that's serious like that. And the doctors are telling them one thing, no, you're gonna have to have surgery, you have a herniated disc. Or saying, no, let's start bending the spine different ways, nice and slowly, carefully, so that you create more space between the vertebra. Therefore, it's not going to squash the vertebra. Therefore, it's not going to split open. And it's hard for them to understand the medical significance of what we're doing because the doctors are telling them something different. And of course, the doctors are smarter.
right, yeah, yeah.
So I say those are the two biggest challenges and hurdles.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think like I was thinking about this a little bit, from a personal point of view. Sometimes you don't have the knowledge about your body. Even like when I got into studying everything, I started actually studying the muscle structure, like the different muscles, and I had misconceptions on what muscles, like how many muscles were say in your hip flexors, how like what is that even, and not even really understanding that whole idea. And once I started to kind of study the different muscles and kind of looking at, okay, this is how they work, how they operate, to a very rudimentary level, then it started to click a lot more. And I think one of the big things that you chat about quite a bit is tight hip flexors from sitting, and that's been a big thing for me. When I stretch and I do your routine, I feel everything's reset. My hip flexors, they might not be perfect, but they're definitely like probably 95% better. Is that one of the biggest things that you kind of come across with your clients? Or
Yeah, I mean, the number one injury is low back. People have back spasms, herniated disc, bulging discs, pinched nerves, misalignments, and so much of it is caused from sitting the wrong way. When
yeah,
you're sitting, your hips are rotated forward into what's called anterior pelvic tilt because your hip flexors, your quads, and your thighs are in a shortened position. When you stand up, you feel like you have to lean back and kind of open up your back. You're not stretching your back, you're stretching your hip flexors to get your hips to rotate back so you don't have all that tension in the front.
right.
And so we teach people how to sit. People buy $600 chairs, and that's not the answer. Lumbar supports and all that. Bottom line is you got to stretch out the hip flexors so you're not in anterior pelvic tilt.
Right.
Now, doctors and physical therapists know what that term means. They have no idea what to do for it. And we have very specific stretches that can undo that.
That's
So,
that's one of the things that you'd said there is that when
hey,
people sit, their hip flexors get tight. So this is again something that I think people don't really understand well, is that putting your muscles in a certain position, that almost creates a memory of sorts for the muscles.
yes,
I don't know how to describe. Is that kind of I don't know if it's a good way to describe it, but that's the way I think of it. So when they create that sort of like quote unquote memory, now they don't want to extend, and now everything's tighter because of it. So if you're looking at your cell phone and your neck's forward, or you're sitting and your hips are like bent, now for hours and hours and hours, that's reducing your range of motion. Is that kind of
yeah,
a
you're training your muscles to be short without trying to.
right?
Uh, it's you have to be conscious of what you're doing in your lifestyle and in your movements and in your training in order to know how to cancel that. Call them and tell them to do a few
That
minutes.
makes total sense. Now, So what other what other sort of things would you recommend in terms of like if someone was coming to work with you or see you, what other things would you chat with them about? Primarily be probably I would imagine the ranges of motion, but you also go through nutrition sometimes and meditation as well as mental readiness for taking on things, right?
Yeah. If you're an athlete and if you're training or competing at a high level, or even if you're a normal person that doesn't have the high athletic goals, you still have to learn how to control your metabolism. Part of our ultimate human performance is learning how to control your metabolism. If you're in gear all the time, when we wake up in the morning, our um, our brain waves go to a certain speed based on our goals. So you wake up and you think, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I have to be here, I have to be there, I have to schedule. So you immediately put it in gear. That gear that you put it in makes your brainwave frequencies go up to above 21 cycles per second on an EEG reading. When you meditate, you learn to slow it down, just like when you're sleeping, to 10 cycles per second or below. If you're going 16 hours a day, every day, all your life, and you're in gear, in gear, in gear, you never take it out of gear except for when you sleep, it's hard to get fully relaxed when you sleep. You don't get enough sleep. It's better to split that and take a meditation, take a stretch where you calm things down,
Yeah.
let your body catch up. Otherwise, you're always in catch up mode where your metabolism, your immune system is trying to catch up. So if you slow your metabolism down, your immune system can boost. When you're
Right.
going, your immune system's taxed all the time. Slow this metabolism down. So we teach meditation. We teach it the right way. There's a lot of people that like I hear some of these meditations on the internet, and the teacher will say, "Take a deep breath." That's not taking a deep breath. That's exhaling. There's two
Right.
parts to it. You got to
Right.
inhale, but you got to hold the air in your lungs so that you have time to get it in your blood. We hold for 8 seconds. Then at the bottom of after you exhale, we hold for 8 seconds without breathing, so you can feel what it feels like to be completely motionless, completely calm. As you focus on the calm, increase the oxygen, focus on the calm, everything slows down. Your immune system works perfectly then.
It's something that I'm not particularly good at because I haven't put a ton of effort in other than when we came down there, and I definitely enjoyed it. The like when we came down for the weekend, you did a little bit of it with us, but I do find that just doing the stretching alone seems to calm my body down.
Yes.
Like just
Yeah,
that alone for an hour and a half, like everything just seems to I just relax, if that makes sense.
yeah. When you hold certain positions, um, without moving, when you do the we call it long sustained static stretching, you have to calm down. You can't be
Mhm.
jittery. You can't be hyper. You got to calm it down. So
Yeah.
it is a form of meditation, just doing the stretches. So if you learn to take deep breaths while you're doing it, it gives your immune system even more of a boost.
It's impressive, or one of the things that sort of impressive, but it's also an amazing thing for me was the idea of learning to listen to your body in terms of you have certain rules pain rules and different things like we don't take it above a 7 out of 10 roughly. One of the things is that when the body relaxes, that moment really is incredible, that you can get a little more, like you'll actually like the muscle relax and stretch out a little bit more. And when you look at so I'm going to try to put a couple of before and after pictures up on the video here. You look at where I was and where I'm at now. People will look at the end result and they'll say that's crazy. Like say the quad stretch. And when I first started doing that, I hated it. I was like, oh man, this is terrible. I can't stand it. But I had to really start to relax, listen to the body. And then like one of the key things, like there's just a few little tools that you utilize, like maybe like the calf board and the pillows and things. Once I started to do that, I could just calm and relax and let the body do its thing. And now I'm hitting like that quad stretch fully, which is insane. If you'd seen where I'll try to put the picture up, and that's where like sometimes people will have skepticism. They'll see that and they'll go, "Oh, that's crazy," but I'm living proof of that it worked, right? And at least for myself, it worked really well.
Yeah, yeah. Reed, what's interesting is if you go to a physical therapist, someone who has a doctorate degree in physical therapy, they're supposed to be the experts in flexibility and strength and rehab and all that. And we say, what is your standard for this range of motion? And they say, what do you mean? And I say, what do you mean? What do I mean? You don't have a standard? Well, everybody's different. Well, okay, but they're different in strength and endurance too, but you can improve that. Why can't you improve flexibility? Well, you can to a certain point, but some people are tighter than others. Duh, no kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why we have to do it. You've
Yeah.
got to reach a standard if you want the human body to not be in pain. And
Yeah.
so it's just funny that when we show them something like the quad stretch or like the arms behind and up, where we're stretching the front of the shoulders, they're like, they can see someone improve right in front of their eyes. Person say they feel better, like we had with some Navy SEALs, and the physical therapist will say, I can't have my people do that. It's too extreme. But yet the person feels better when they do it. And we have hundreds of cases of that right in front of their eyes. And they're like, no, we can't do it. It's extreme because it's outside the box of what they learned. And they have boundaries. And we take the boundaries. We say, don't disregard the boundaries. Work through them to get to the right boundary. And that's what we've set. The specific goals.
And you have solid guidance in terms of rules along the way. Like, so for instance, one of the things, like going back to that pain threshold idea, and there's a certain couple things. If you break those, yeah, you can maybe tighten up a muscle by accident. You know what I mean? Like, so if you go into or out of a stretch too quickly, you might cause the muscle to spasm. But if you follow the rules properly and
Right.
you're patient with it, you, at least for me anyway, I can just speak for me and my family, we've seen progress, and it's been like I said before, it's been life changing.
Yeah, for sure. It's a matter of growing into it. You have
Yeah.
to grow into relaxation. You have to grow into letting the tension release. And when you become an expert at it and you hit our goals, you're just not going to hurt anymore. You're going to be
Yeah.
young forever.
Now,
We have people in their 80s and 90s doing our stretching routine, and they feel better. They can't do without it.
It's incredible. You've worked with a lot of professional athletes, and you have your set, your UHP 24 ranges of motion. With the professional athletes, do you have, like, as I understand, you have even more ranges for them based on their sport? Is that correct?
The 24 ranges pretty much covers what we need from most athletes in most sports.
Right.
Now, when you have someone like a dancer or a gymnast, they have to take it to a little bit further level. We do have some more advanced stretches for that, but they learn to stretch. That's 50% of what they do. Dancers and gymnasts, and they have to stretch to get into positions they want to be in. And it's funny, in the other sports, stretching is not part of what they do. It's not in the culture, and we have to change the whole culture to get them to do it. To try and get a football player to stretch, they're so used to just dynamic warm up and then run sprints
Right.
and lift weights.
Yeah.
And to try and get them to change is like, shrinking a dinosaur. I mean, it's not an easy project, but the ones that do immediately get the reward for it, and they feel better, and they run faster, and they perform better. They're stronger. A lot of people think that stretching will inactivate muscles, so you're not going to be as strong. No, you actually become more strong. You're stronger because you're unlocking fibers that you weren't using. And when you unlock them and you can use them, you have more fibers to use through a longer range of motion, and you have more fuel to store. So you end up being stronger by being more flexible. We proved that over and over and over.
It makes so much sense when you start to understand the training and the ideas. Would you say, like, and I don't know if this is a fair assessment or not, with, like, say, like with a professional athlete, like someone that's incredibly good at their sport, they've worked hard to get there, they've got incredible genetics. Would it be something that, like, they've been able to get there without having to stretch because maybe they had that added layer of flexibility early on, and they were able to kind of perform at that high level, but at a certain point they're going to get tighter, and then that's going to be like the problem, kind of like what we were chatting about earlier? Is that kind of a common theme, and thus the direction from, like, trainers and coaches might be performance first, or for themselves, performance first, and, like, I don't, like, their body's not giving them those warning signals that, hey, you are getting tighter along the way. Is that a big part of the problem? Or
yeah, I mean, there's some. If you look at, we just had the Olympics, and you have some 16, 17, 18-year-olds out there performing, and they're performing on talent. Now, 4 years from now, if they compete again, are they going to improve? If you get a sprinter who's running a world-class time when he's 17 years old and he's 21, he doesn't run any faster. What did he do for 4 years? He's running on talent. He never learned how to train properly. And
Right.
that's what we do is we teach people how to train properly to reach ultimate performance. But it starts with flexibility so you don't get injured. It starts
Yep.
with learning how to control the tension in your body and gear it towards the right activity, gear it towards the right movements.
Yep.
So, all the time we have young athletes and they make it to age 21 or 25 and then all of a sudden they have injuries. Then people think, oh, they're old, they're 25. No, they're not. You don't know how to coach them. Professional athletes should be the ones that when they retire, 70% of professional athletes retire because of pain and injury. They can't take it anymore. And they write them off. So they're the ones who should be learning how to train properly to go then teach the general population, teach their family, teach their friends, teach other people how to train properly. But instead, it's the reverse. 70% of them retire because of pain and injury. Otherwise, they'd all be competing until they're 40 years old.
Yeah.
The evidence is in the age and performance. If you're 29 and you've had your second knee surgery and you just can't run fast anymore, maybe you should look at how to train properly instead of the doctor's way of doing things or the strength coach's way of doing things. You need to open up and learn and add to your repertoire of training so that you can do it properly.
That's it's very interesting. I often think about it seems like we're getting athletes, just certain athletes that are going farther in age than previous generations. So some people that come to mind would be like Tom Brady, maybe LeBron James. These guys are. And would you say that they're taking a like pouring keen interest into this as well? Like with is that how they're kind of starting? Like, I mean, obviously they're trying to hit it on every level, but they take it very seriously. I heard, I don't know how true this is, so take it with a grain of salt. But I heard like LeBron's throwing in a couple $1 million plus a year just in his own personal wellness. Is that something where like those guys that are extending those, like able to go that longer years, is that possibly that they're tapping into this idea of keeping their body open?
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing for their training. They either have natural flexibility so they can last longer, or they're training more properly. So I don't know what they're doing, so I can't comment on whether they're doing it our way or not, or
Yeah.
close to what we're doing. But they're obviously doing some things right, or they have natural flexibility and they've been able to get away with it this far.
Right. Yeah. They've been able to. Yeah. It's fascinating. So going forward for Ultimate Human Performance, you guys just did a big seminar in London. How was that? It sounded like it was really good. You got to do. You've been all over the world doing seminars. Like you've come to Vancouver. You've been quite a few places. How was that? Was it a good experience? And do you have anything else coming up in the near future? Or?
Yeah, we have. It looks like we're going to do our next seminar is going to be in November in San Diego. This is our home turf, and we'll have people from all over the world coming.
Yep.
We just had one in London, very successful. We've done other ones in London, in Germany, in Vancouver, in Edmonton, Canada, all over the United States, Mexico. So, we try and do 3 or 4 at least, or sometimes as many as 5 or 6 per year. The next one looks like November. We're about to announce the dates.
Right on.
So anyone who's out there, you can either read the book, The Joe Hippensteel Method. It's now a bestseller, and it teaches most of what we do. Or you can come to a seminar, or you can do a one-on-one session with us contact us through the website, ultimatehumanperformance.com, and set up a one-on-one session, and we do a Zoom session. We literally get people who have been to 10 different doctors, can't get fixed. We do a Zoom session with them. We can see them. We put them in certain positions. Okay, lean a little bit more. Put your elbow down here. Do this position and hold. We're going to hold it. And then we're going to educate you as you do it. Never go past a 7 in pain when you're stretching. Hold for 2 minutes. At 2 minutes, I want you to come out of it, lie flat on the ground, and absorb blood. We call it the dead zone. So we teach them for an hour and a half. And their back feels better when they're done. We haven't even touched them. We can't reach through the computer.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's incredible, and it just takes a bit of like you said before, perseverance and desire and want to get it, to make it happen, hopefully, and then it comes together. Are you anything else big coming up? I know that you said you're going to be doing some podcasts coming up in the near future. Is there anything else happening for you guys, or?
Yeah, we have about 10 different podcasts that are going to be publicizing our work and sessions like this to get the word out. People that have followed us and found that, hey, this stuff is pretty amazing. So we want to tell our listeners. So
Yeah.
we want to thank them, and we thank you, of course, for allowing us the opportunity. And we're honored to be able to be on your show.
Yeah, no, thank you it's been great. It's been good. One of the questions that I try to ask everyone, do you drink coffee anymore, or at all, or no?
Never,
No.
never have.
So if you were to have a drink of your choice, any drink, with anyone in the world, past or present, anywhere, does someone come to mind who it would be, or who you'd be interested in having a coffee or a drink with?
Wow. Would either be Uncle Albert Einstein or Elon Musk drinking
Oh, there you
a
go.
protein shake.
Those would be fascinating conversations.
Yeah.
That'd be. Everybody is. I'm a broken record, but I've been big on learning about Napoleon. So I think it'd be pretty fascinating to sit in a tent with him. Go over some of maybe a couple of days outside of a big battle and just chat about what his philosophies and battle plans would be and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think Elon or Einstein would be incredible to pick
Yeah.
their brain on how they learn, how they do things, for sure.
Yeah, these are people that have a vision and they want to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And so visionaries is we have fascinating conversations when I get to sit with people who have the vision of a better way of doing things, and it leads to paradigm shifts in human culture. And that's what we're doing here is we're shifting the paradigms from just training hard and using gadgets in the athletic training room, taking it to the next level, learning how to maintain your body and expand its capabilities by starting with the foundation of natural range of motion like kids can do
Yeah.
all through your
Yeah.
life. So that's what we're working on.
It's awesome, and I think that it sums it up really well about what you and your team, that you have a vision and you persevered through a lot of, working with athletes, criticism at times. I think from just chatting with you and having to kind of knock down barriers and go, no, like this works. Or at least try it, and hopefully it will work for you. And which is, kudos to you to persevere through it, because I know that must be challenging at times. Like it must be pretty difficult when you have people like you said, maybe with a PhD that is trying to poke holes in what you're doing. How do you find that you manage that and have that resilience? It's something that I struggle with at
Yeah.
times. Like,
If you have seen the movie Moneyball,
yes.
Brad Pitt plays the part of Billy Beane, the manager of the Oakland A's. And they end up, through statistics, changing the game of baseball.
Yeah.
Learning how to get people on base, which is how you ultimately will score runs. And that system is now being used by everybody. But when he made it to their league championships, I don't know what the year was, but the owner of the Boston Red Sox called him up and said, "We want to talk." And so he flies to Boston, and they sit down, and he says, "You've taken it. You've taken it." I think the exact quote is, "You've taken it in the teeth. First guy through the wall gets bloody." So,
yeah. It's a big part of it, isn't it? It's a big part of like having that bravery and belief
breaking it down.
and vision, really, to try to. And but the other part of it, I think, I would imagine for you that has really helped is you've seen the success in the athletes and the people that you work with. Like you're like, it's amazing. You look at like yourself. Okay, you took your body to an elite level in decathlon. Your wife Mimi, she did incredible in masters track and field. You guys worked together on that, and I think she won like something like 5 national championships at the masters level, which is
Yeah,
incredible.
with no talent, none.
Yeah, which is unbelievable. And you're not, and I know you're not saying that in a derogatory way. You're just saying that like in the sense of she didn't have that like some people just come in with natural talent and they can just blow the doors off things. She had to work extremely hard to hit those benchmarks. And then you have people like your brother. I know you've helped your brother. He's like a 4-time 60+ CrossFit world champion. It just goes to show the people around you, like the Navy SEALs, the professional athletes, because you've worked with big pro teams too, haven't you, over the years?
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
I'll tell you another really good example. 5 years ago, I met a kid in high school who had a broken back, baseball player, and he went to all the specialists, like 5 different doctors, surgeons, um, back experts, and they said, "You'll never play baseball again." 5 different physical therapists. They said, "No, you'll never play again." He came to me. I said, "We'll have you playing in 10 days."
Yeah, yeah, it's incredible because I met him, Andy, right?
He just signed this week a professional contract.
What? Oh man, congrats! Oh, that's so amazing. That's incredible because we've been kind of following and hoping for him.
Yeah,
That's so awesome. Oh man, I'm so excited.
he's
That's
going
great.
pro.
Yeah, that's great. Are
It's
you allowed to
amazing.
say where or not? Not so much right now.
Yeah, it's actually he was going to sign with a Canadian league,
Yeah,
and it's a development league. He flies tomorrow to Albany, New York, to compete against the Canadian league, who was going to sign him, but they hesitated, so the other team signed him, which is now going to be the proving grounds for him to uh, be absorbed into one of the big teams.
that's
So
incredible,
yeah,
man.
kudos to him, man. He's
Yeah,
worked, he's been dedicated, he's done an incredible job. His name's Andy Simo. You'll see we're going to put a Instagram up today.
he's
So
such a nice young man. He's
he
awesome.
is,
He's really good.
yeah,
That's great.
he's
And
done the
like you
work.
said,
Done the work.
hi- his story is incredible because you said like he had a broken back right through baseball. I
Yeah,
think and you
yeah,
were able to work with him and bring him back to life. And his ranges of motion are incredible because he's a
they are.
big, thick guy. And like, can you talk a little bit to that too? Because you had to work with
Yeah,
him quite a bit
he
on that.
functions like a gymnast now. I mean,
Yeah,
he has incredible flexibility. He's reached all of our ranges of motion. He stretches sometimes 2 hours a day, whatever he has to do to be prepared. And
yeah,
it takes that kind of dedication uh, to be at that level.
yeah.
And kudos to him. He's done a fantastic job. He's dedicated. Another athlete that I worked with, Dwight Freeney, who was just inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame literally
Right.
last week. And he had blown his knee out. He was had an all-star career for 13 years with Indianapolis Colts. Then he got traded to the Chargers and blew out his knee the fourth game. I met him at the end of that year. We had 6 weeks left before the next season, and he couldn't bend his knee 90 degrees.
Man.
And all the rehab he did and all the physical therapy he did and strength work wasn't working. And so I said, well, here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to reach these ranges of motion. And he dug in, and we spent 2 hours a day for 6 weeks. And he played 4 more years, making $1 million a year, no injuries,
Wow.
to age 38 as a defensive end. Incredible. And he was just inducted in the Hall of Fame, so he deserves it. Kudos
Oh
to him
man.
for being an
Uh,
incredibly dedicated athlete.
yeah, that's amazing. Like truly. You've also worked with. Can you describe a little bit? When you've worked with professional baseball players, one of the things that I remember you talking about is like say for a pitcher, for example, sometimes they're and I know like we're talking athletics here, but sometimes their ranges are so tight when they're throwing that ball. Can you describe a little bit? I know you've got like certain things that you do specifically for different professional athletes, but can you just kind of describe in a nutshell some of the stuff that you've done to help those guys so that they can go on and have good careers?
Yeah, I've worked with about 16 different pitchers, and the ranges of motion that they have are just deficient for what they're supposed to be able to do. These kids are throwing when they're 8 years old. They throw by the time they're 16, their arms and shoulders are already worn out.
Yeah.
Some of them have already had surgeries. And that's just ridiculous. That's just improper training. They throw and they throw and they throw and they throw, and they develop their bodies into just a tight machine. And we take and open up their ranges of motion. I've taken some professional athletes, some professional pitchers who have lost their professional contracts in age 30s, and nobody will pick them up. They try and rehab them for a couple of years, can't do it. In 6 weeks, we get them a multi-million-dollar contract, and it's like, well, that's just what we do.
Yeah.
We do it. you have to have a range of motion. You have to be able to be strong through that range of motion. Then you can do your job. But if you don't have that range of motion, and when I watch some of the strength coaches or the physical therapists on those teams, professional teams, they're deficient. They're deficient in their understanding of flexibility. If you don't have our protocol, our standards, you're going to get injured. It's just a
Right.
matter of time.
Yeah,
And
just a
if you
matter.
increase our standard, you're not injured anymore. You can go back and play your game, make millions of dollars.
Is it something like fair to say, like with some of those guys, like when they're throwing the ball, you've been able to take like, I think I remember you saying you're able to add almost like something like 4 inches on the front and 4 inches on the back. So now
Yeah,
they've got like almost like 8 inches more whip. If that,
exactly.
again, I'm not a baseball player, so I'm
Exactly.
saying it kind of
Yeah,
like rudimentary, but
yeah. If you the average range of motion that a major league pitcher has now, if we add a little bit more in the back where they have an extra 4 inches of pull on the ball and a little bit more extension in the front, the longer and harder you can pull on that ball, the faster it's going to go. You're
right.
taking guys that are older and they throw faster in their older age than they did when they were in their 20s. That's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And that's worth millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just a matter of understanding the foundation of all training should be flexibility. And if people don't get that, good luck. You're going to get injured.
Yeah.
I wish the best to you, but you're going to.
Yeah, this has become the foundation of my sort of recreational athletics that I do at this age, and it'll be the foundation for the rest of my life because it's really given me that benchmark of where I should be at, and I can really tell when I'm tight now. So it's been pretty awesome. But
Yeah, and
well,
yeah,
that's awesome, Joel. It's great, man.
as you
That's
are
right.
a black belt in jiu-jitsu, 20 years from now, you want to keep training, you're going to
Yeah.
blow some of the young guys away.
Yeah, that's it's
Incredible.
funny because I'm at a bit of a crossroads. I've taken a few months off and I really miss jujitsu, but I'm enjoying mountain biking. So I'm kind of trying to figure out. A
Yeah,
buddy of
yeah,
many just opened up a new gym. He might be on the podcast soon. He's a pro fighter, so I'm hoping to maybe get out there and train with him this week. So it's going to hurt because I'm so rusty, but I just have to swallow the pride a little bit and hopefully get out there. But
have
well,
some
that's
fun. Stay
awesome.
loose.
Thank you so much, Joe. I think we've covered a lot of ground. It's been awesome, and appreciate you taking the time. And your staff's awesome, Day and Mimi and everybody that's down there. I'm so stoked to hear that Andy got signed. That's incredible. Really, really good news. So, but
Yeah, thank you,
yeah,
Reed. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm honored to be on your show. So I
thank
hope
you.
all your listeners can get a few tidbits and
Yeah, yeah.
improve their lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And once again, if you get a chance, like reach out to Joe. You got go to www.ultimatehumanperformance.com and check out his Instagram at Ultimate Human Performance by Joe, and he's also got his book and whatnot. So yeah, right on. Thanks, Joe. It's great.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Reed.
It's
Have an
great.
awesome week. Have an awesome year. Stay
You
loose.
too. You too. Thank you so much.